A couple drove to a park for a night date. However, during this time, both were abducted and eventually buried in the forest. Through investigation, the police believed that this could be the work of a juvenile delinquent gang, and the perpetrators were extremely brutal and inhumane. The case caused shock and widespread discussion in Japanese society. The story took place in Aichi Prefecture, located in central Japan. The capital of Aichi Prefecture is Nagoya City. This is the fourth most populous city in Japan. The main character of the story is 20-year-old Sumida Suematsu. She was an apprentice at a hair salon in Nagoya. While working, she met a 19-year-old male colleague named Nomura Akiyoshi. Although he was a year younger than her, he had entered the profession earlier and was also the one training her. After a while, the two developed feelings for each other and fell in love. One day after work, they decided to drive to a nearby park for a date. And then a terrible thing happened to the couple that would make anyone shudder upon hearing it. So what exactly happened to the couple that day? Next, let's turn back time to February 23rd, 1988. February 23rd, 1988. It was a Tuesday. 8:30. A man went to Odaka Ryokuchi Park in Nagoya City for a walk. Suddenly he saw a white car parked on the side of the park road with shattered windows and damaged taillights and mirrors. The car's body had dozens of dents caused by being hit with a hard object. Glass shards were scattered all over the road, and there was some blood on the ground. At that time, gangs were rampant and violent incidents occurred frequently. After seeing this scene, the man immediately realized that a violent incident must have happened here last night, so he went to the police station to report it. After receiving the report, the police quickly arrived at the scene. In front of them was a white Toyota car with a smashed body. All the windows were shattered. Bloodstains were found on the car seats, and no valuables were left inside the vehicle. Through the license plate, the police investigated the owner of the car. It was Sumida's father. The police immediately contacted him. He stated that his daughter came home from work at 10 p.m. last night. But shortly after, she said she was going out to meet a friend, took the car keys, and left. She still hasn't come home yet. The next day, February 24th, the local police department also received a phone call. The caller stated his 19-year-old son, Nomura, had not returned home for 2 days. He was very worried about his son and wanted to ask the police for help in finding him. After investigating, the police found that the two missing people worked together in a hair salon and were a couple. Based on the available clues, it was speculated that the two had gone to Odaka Ryokuchi Park for a date that night. Afterwards, they might have been attacked by local gangsters and both were kidnapped. Because on the night they went missing, 2 attacks on couples had also occurred at nearby Kinjo Pier in Nagoya. The perpetrators used wooden bats to attack the victims and rob them of their money, according to the accounts of some witnesses near the scene. That night they saw 2 brown Nissan Cedrics driving recklessly near the scene. One had black-tinted windows, so he couldn't see clearly inside. Another witness also said he had seen a car with similar characteristics entering a car repair shop. The police then quickly went to the repair shop to gather information about the vehicle. It was learned that the car belonged to a member of the Kodo-kei organization. This is a secondary organization of the 6th Yamaguchi Gumi, the largest known Yakuza syndicate in Japan. After searching for information, the police tracked down the man who owned the car. He said, "That car was lent to other members of the organization a few days ago." After further investigation, they determined that 8 people had used the car, including 6 males and 2 females aged between 17 and 20. The 8 of them included Shigeo Kojima, 19 years old, Tokumaru Nobuhisa, 17 years old, Kondo Hiroyuki, 19 years old, Takashi Kenichi, 20 years old. Rie Ryuzoji, 17 years old, Yoshi Tsutsui, 18 years old, and 2 other members of the organization. After investigating, the police discovered that 6 men and women in 2 brown Nissan Cedrics checked into a local hotel in the afternoon after the couple disappeared. Following the trail, the police searched the area around the hotel and found another brown Cedric with front-end collision damage and black-tinted windows. The owner of the car was Shigeo Kojima, who lived in a nearby apartment. The police then went to the apartment and arrested 5 suspects, including Kojima. On February 28th, 5 days after the couple went missing, the police proceeded to arrest the suspect Takashi Kenichi at his residence. After interrogation, all 6 of them confessed to their crimes and recounted the criminal process. The police were shocked by their cruelty and lack of remorse. They even laughed out loud occasionally while describing it. Going back to the day of the incident, Kojima and his group of 8 had borrowed a brown Nissan Cedric from a senior in the organization, and he himself also had a similar car. The whole group went to a restaurant for dinner. After dinner, they went to Kinjo Pier. There, they spotted a couple on a date inside their car. The 8 of them then surrounded and assaulted the couple. They robbed the couple of 86,000 yen. Another married couple happened to pass by and noticed the scene, so they drove away to escape. They were then chased and intercepted by the 8 people, robbed and beaten. After robbing the 2 couples at Kinjo Pier, the group drove to Odaka Ryokuchi Park. On the way, 2 members out of the 8 got out of the car and left for some reason. 4:30 on February 23rd. This was the time they arrived at the park. Here they saw a white Toyota parked on the side of the park with 2 people sitting inside. Those 2 people were the missing couple, Sumida and Nomura. At that time, the park was very deserted and quiet. Therefore, the 4 men and 2 girls felt this was a favorable opportunity to strike, so they grabbed wooden bats and rushed to the front of the white Toyota car. Nomura, sitting in the car, realized someone was trying to rob them, so he started the car and wanted to flee. But the group quickly used their 2 cars to block the front of his car. Nomura still tried to start the car and attempted to escape. This angered the whole group, and they jumped onto the roof of the Toyota. They repeatedly hit the car's body and doors hard with wooden bats, then dragged both of them out of the car and beat them. Sumida was terrified and begged them to let them go. The couple also gave them all the money they had, which was 10,000 yen, but they refused to stop. They started forcing Sumida to take off all her clothes. She was intimidated, so she had no choice but to follow their orders. But all 6 people still wouldn't let her go. They continued to beat her with wooden bats. Afterwards, the 4 men in the group dragged her to the grass and gang raped her. 6 o'clock. It was already morning. The 6 of them were afraid of being exposed. After some discussion, they forced the couple into their car and quickly drove away from the park. They continued discussing in the car. Kojima said, "That guy is heavily injured and will die if he isn't treated at a hospital, so let's eliminate him and sell the girl for money." 0930. The group of 6 checked into a hotel in Nagoya. They locked the couple in a room and made continuous phone calls but couldn't find a buyer for the girl. Finally, they decided to dispose of her as well. Because one of their 2 cars was borrowed from a senior in the organization, and the car had front-end damage after colliding with a white Toyota last night. They were afraid of being reprimanded by their superior, so they drove to a repair shop. Afterwards, the group proceeded to take the couple to a cemetery. This was an area where their gang frequently operated. Members of the organization would be sent here to clean up every day. If you did something here, the remaining traces would soon be cleaned up. The 4 men first took Nomura out of the car. Then they took a rope from the trunk and looped it around his neck. 2 people held each end and pulled tightly like a tug of war. Sumida was blindfolded in the car and didn't know what was happening outside. When she heard the sound of someone putting something in the trunk, she immediately asked the person next to her, "What's wrong?" But no one answered her question. In reality, that was the sound of them putting Nomura into the trunk. After that, the group drove away from the cemetery. 11 o'clock. They drove to Kinjo Pier to rest. Sumida in the car said she wanted to go out for a walk, and the group agreed. At that time, a member named Tokumaru untied the rope from her hands and removed her blindfold. Sumida walked close to the sea with the intention of jumping in. After keeping a distance from the others while they weren't paying attention, she immediately dashed towards the beach but was held back by Kojima and Tokumaru. Furious at her actions, they took her to Kojima's apartment and gang-raped her again. 2200. The group continued driving Sumida to a forest in Oyamada village, Mie Prefecture. The location was very remote, and almost no one would ever come here. 200. On February 24th. The group arrived at the previously calculated area. Sumida was blindfolded by them with a towel. The two girls stayed in the car to keep an eye on Sumida, while the four men began digging a wide hole. And they planned to bury Nomura in that hole. In the car, the two girls asked Sumida, "In the end, do you have anything you want to say?" Sumida seemed to know what was happening outside. She replied, "I beg you to kill me and bury me with my boyfriend so we can go to heaven together." A while later, the group of four finished digging the hole. Sumida knew she couldn't escape death, so she begged them to let her see her boyfriend one last time. Tokumaru took off her blindfold and shined a flashlight into the trunk. After looking inside, she cried very loudly. Next, the group ordered her to remove any identifiable items from Nomura's body. And then they threw him into the hole. The group of 6 stood by, smoking and joking, showing no sense of guilt. Afterwards, they continued to torture Sumida. Then they put her in the hole and proceeded to bury the couple. At that moment, Kojima thought the two of them were a couple, so they had to be posed beautifully. Therefore, he flipped Nomura on his back and laid Sumida face down on top of him, similar to how two people would hug each other. After doing that, they filled the hole with dirt and used some fallen leaves and dry branches to cover the scene. All of the two victims' belongings were also burned by them. 0300. They returned to Kojima's apartment to discuss how to evade punishment when the police swooped in and arrested them. Based on the testimonies of the 6 suspects, the police found the couple's bodies. This was an extremely violent juvenile crime in Japanese history. The method of committing the crime was incredibly brutal both physically and mentally toward the victims. Out of the 6 suspects, 5 were minors. Among them, Kojima was the main culprit and the rest were accomplices. The police investigated the history of each person and found out. Suspect Kojima was born in August 1968. He was the second son in his family. Throughout his school years, he continuously stole and was caught many times. Because he was a minor, he was released. After finishing high school, he enrolled in a vocational school in Kita Ward, Nagoya City. Right after he entered the school, a fire of unknown origin broke out there. Because of Kojima's criminal history, the teachers and classmates all suspected that he was the one who did it. This made Kojima very annoyed. He attacked the teacher and classmates and was expelled from school. By the age of 18, Kojima entered society and went to work at a local pub. One day, Kojima and his younger brother drove out to hang out. Then his younger brother accidentally drove into someone else. For this reason, he had to pay the other person a huge amount of compensation. At that time, the underworld was rampant. A friend of Kojima invited him to join the Kodokai organization and promised to resolve the problem. Kojima agreed. After joining, he met the members of the group. Next was the suspect Tokumaru Nobuhisa, who was only 17 years old at the time of the crime. He was the eldest son in his family. His family was going through a lot of hardships. When he was young in elementary school, Tokumaru often couldn't afford to pay for school lunches and was frequently mocked and bullied by his classmates. From a young age, Tokumaru was taught by his father, "If you are bullied by others, you must fight back." Since then, Tokumaru followed his father's words and tended to attack his classmates. By high school, Tokumaru was warned by the police for stealing a classmate's motorcycle and his habit of using stimulants. During that period, he made friends with many bad elements. After graduating, he got acquainted with a girl. After a period of dating, the two decided to get married. But during that time, he frequently beat her, causing the two to break up. During his heartbreak, some friends invited him to join the gang and promised if he joined women, and money would always be available if he wanted. Therefore, Tokumaru agreed to join. The next suspect was Takashi Kenichi. At the time of the crime, he was 20 years old, born in January 1968. He was the eldest child in his family. His parents divorced when he was just 1 year old, and he was raised by his grandmother. By the time he was in the 3rd grade of elementary school, he began constantly skipping school and stealing other people's toys. After graduating from elementary school, Takashi's grandmother was too old to care for him. Therefore, she decided to send him to an orphanage. When Takashi was 16, his mother and sister visited frequently. After becoming close to his family, Takashi moved back in with his mother. Not long after, Takashi's mother decided to remarry. The prospect of living with a stepfather made Takashi feel uncomfortable, so he went to live alone in Kanagawa Prefecture and worked part-time at a newspaper office. Later, Takashi got his driver's license and returned to Nagoya to work as a salesperson in a company. However, Takashi didn't like the job and quit right after. Takashi's career then continuously met with failures, causing him great distress. To relieve pressure, he got involved with a group of bad boys. By the age of 18, Takashi joined the organization through an acquaintance. Here he met Kojima and often went to fast food restaurants with some other members. Another member of the criminal group was Rie Ryuzoji, who was 17 at the time of the crime. Rie, born in January 1971, was the eldest daughter in her family. Rie's parents also divorced when she was young, and Rie went to live with her father. When Rie turned 13, her father decided to remarry a 17-year-old woman. Rie didn't want to call a woman only a few years older than her mother. The relationship between the two was very bad. At that time, her stepmother was pregnant. Her father, fearing it would affect the baby, sent her to live with a relative. But the relative also disliked Rie, so they sent her to live in an orphanage. In 1986, 15-year-old Rie graduated from middle school and started working in a beauty salon. Not long after, she quit her job and worked as a waitress in a fast food restaurant. After a period of interacting with gang members, she and Takashi started dating. The next suspect was Kondo Hiroyuki, 19 years old at the time of the crime. Born in April 1969. Kondo was the eldest son. His parents divorced when he was only 6 years old. After that, Kondo stayed with his mother, who was very strict with him. But from a young age, he was disobedient and didn't outwardly express his true feelings, choosing instead to suppress them inside. Seeing that Kondo was behaving very well, his mother devoted her energy to making money and neglected paying much attention to him. Kondo started associating with bad students when he was in middle school. By age 18, Kondo joined a biker gang. At 19, Kondo officially joined the syndicate and met Kojima and the others. The final suspect in the group of 6 was Yoshi Tsutsui, 18 years old at the time of the crime. Yoshi was born in 1970. She ran away from home after arguing with her mother at age 16. After that, she met Kondo and joined the organization. On July 18, 1988, the case was tried at the Nagoya District Court. The prosecutor stated, "The above case is a rare and cruel crime, and what the perpetrators did is no different from demons." On June 18, 1989, after a year-long trial, the case came to an end. The court sentenced the defendants for intentional murder. Kojima was sentenced to death. Tokumaru was sentenced to life imprisonment. Takashi was sentenced to 17 years in prison. Kondo was sentenced to 15 years in prison. As for the two girls, Rie and Yoshi, they received an indeterminate sentence of 5 to 10 years in prison. On November 5, 1990. Half a year after the first trial, the second trial was held at the Nagoya High Court. The prosecution believed that defendant Kojima's actions were intentional. The criminal methods were savage and caused serious consequences for society. Considering his behavior, the death penalty was the most appropriate. The judge considered the criminal methods of defendant Kojima to be savage, causing severe consequences. However, during his detention, the defendant showed submission, repented for his sins, and actively sought the victim's family's sympathy. The defendant was a minor and still had a chance to start over. Therefore, the court of first instance reduced Kojima's death sentence to life imprisonment. Takashi's 17-year sentence was changed to 13 years in prison. The other members retained their original sentences. After sentencing, Kojima was imprisoned in Okayama Prison. While in prison, he continuously sent letters to the victims' families, begging for forgiveness. Kojima's parents had to pay a total of 27 million yen for the incident. As for the two girls, Rie and Yoshi, after being released from prison, they paid a portion of the compensation to the families of the two victims, and then disappeared. One member of the group, Kondo, did not pay compensation to the victims' families after being released from prison. Some media outlets interviewed Kondo, and he stated, "Regarding the compensation, I asked my parents to pay it, but they didn't. I also tried to contact them, but they didn't answer the phone. Therefore, don't come to me asking about compensation. It has nothing to do with me. I also don't have time to visit the victims' graves. If people just dwell on the past incident, they can't move forward, right?" During the interview, Kondo showed absolutely no remorse. Afterwards, he also changed his name and started a new life. In criminal psychology, there is a theory called the psychology of criminal groups. A bad group of people often commits crimes without premeditation. They are triggered by a specific event, and their behavior carries a certain situational and emotional tone. The 6 perpetrators generally did not have a good educational environment and lacked care and attention from their parents. They came together because of some shared interests. After spotting the couple Sumida and Nomura, at first, they just wanted to ruin their date, teach them a lesson, and rob them of some money. But as things escalated, the 6 of them developed a gang mentality. As a result, the violence escalated step by step and became increasingly out of control. A person acting alone might be relatively rational and able to take responsibility for their actions. But in the case of acting as accomplices, their sense of responsibility and morality decreases significantly. After bullying the weak, they would lose their rationality, leading to tragedy. The Nagoya incident had a negative impact on society. But not long after, another concrete encased murder case occurred in Japan. Some people suspected that the crimes of the aforementioned group were not limited to just that incident, but had been repeated many times. The emergence of crimes committed by minors made society realize the importance of family education. Love your children more and correct their wrongdoings. Don't make the same mistakes over and over again, leading them down a path of no return. Today's video ends here, and see you in the next videos. Goodbye.